If you had seen this earlier, you would definitely have stopped believing in the official version of history. An alchemist who supposedly has lived for 700 years, a forgery that deceived the Louvre, a dictator's vanished sword, a mummy that turned out not to be who they thought it was. Archaeologists and scientists are finding more and more evidence that the past was nothing like what we've been told. These discoveries will make you reconsider the entire official history of humanity. Hello, my friend. Welcome to the Kurtop channel. The Sword of Islam. This sword, known as the Sword of Islam, was created as a symbolic ceremonial weapon and was presented to Benito Mussolini in 1937 in Tripoli. The goal was to demonstrate the support of his regime by the Muslims of Libya, which was under Italian control at the time. Mussolini readily accepted this gift and even used it in propaganda, presenting himself as a defender of Islam, an attempt to strengthen Italy's influence in North Africa and the Middle East. The sword was distinguished by its luxurious design, inlays, intricate engravings, and the Oriental motifs emphasized its status not as a weapon, but as a political symbol. However, the fate of this sword turned out to be dramatic. In July 1943, when Mussolini's residence in the Rocca delle Caminate was destroyed and looted by fighters of the Italian resistance movement, the sword disappeared without a trace. It is still unknown whether it was destroyed, hidden, or taken away. The Sword of Islam remains in history as a rare example of how a weapon can be used as an instrument of ideology. It was used not for war, but as an instrument of ideology, and as an artifact that disappeared along with the fall of the regime that tried to use it to hold on to power. The Tomb of the Unknown Pharaoh. In Egypt, near the city of Abydos, archaeologists discovered the tomb of a pharaoh that is about 3,600 years old. It is located 7 meters underground in an ancient necropolis known as the Mountain of Anubis. The tomb turned out to be almost empty. Most likely it was looted back in ancient times. The name of the pharaoh was written on the plaster at the entrance, but it has not survived to this day. Scientists suggest that it could be one of the lesser-known rulers, such as Sennaib or Pentageni, who are mentioned in other sources, but whose tombs have not yet been found. The tomb dates back to the Second Intermediate Period, a difficult time in Egypt's history when the country was divided into several kingdoms and was in political chaos. One of these regional kingdoms was the Abydos dynasty. Its representatives could have been buried in this area. Interestingly, the new tomb is built into the complex of the earlier and more influential pharaoh, Neferhotep III. Architecturally, it resembles both the tombs of the Middle Kingdom and those from later periods. Mysterious clay spheres. In Turkmenistan in the Karakum Desert, archaeologists have resumed excavations of the ancient city of Gonur-Tepe and have found something very unusual. After a 3-year break caused by the pandemic, scientists have returned to studying this important Bronze Age site. Gonur-Tepe is the ancient center of the mysterious land of Margiana, which existed about 4,000 years ago. One of the most unexpected finds was clay balls with pieces of pottery stuck into them. The balls were arranged in a certain order and apparently were used in rituals. Nothing like this had been found here before. Strange cone-shaped objects made of minerals with glaze were also found. Perhaps they also had a specific purpose. Maybe they had ritual significance or were used for divination. Interestingly, similar objects have been found over a vast area from the Gulf of Oman to India, and even in Western Turkey. This supports the theory of a Central Asian interaction sphere, in which different cultures actively exchange knowledge, traditions, and technologies. The casket with relics of Polish monarchs. This elegant casket with the inscription Izabela Czartoryska is not just an antique item, but a true symbol of Polish history. In 1800, Princess Izabela Czartoryska gathered a unique collection of relics in it, connected with Polish kings and great historical events. In total, the casket contained 73 items ranging from personal belongings of monarchs to fragments of weapons and clothing, symbolizing national heritage and the spirit of resistance. Izabela saw it as her mission to preserve Polish identity during the country's partitions. Her casket became part of the first museum in Poland, the Temple of the Sibyl, established in Puławy, where she invited guests to remind them of the glory of the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. Unfortunately, like many national treasures, the casket did not escape a tragic fate. In 1939, during the Nazi invasion of Poland, it was looted, and to this day some of the relics are considered lost. Wooden sculpture of Christ. In the Belarusian village of Nesutici, in the semi-ruined chapel of the St. Michael the Archangel Church, restorers discovered a wooden sculpture of the crucified Christ. The find is more than 250 years old, and experts call it a real miracle. After all these years, it has hardly suffered any damage. Studies have shown that the sculpture was carved from pear wood, presumably in the 17th century. The exact origin is still unknown, but there are theories that it could have been made in Italy or Prussia. Such finds are rare. They remind us that many secrets may still be hidden in forgotten corners. The anatomical machines of Raimondo di Sangro. In Naples, in the basement of the San Severo Chapel, there are two exhibits that still capture the imagination of visitors and scientists. These are the so-called anatomical machines, two skeletons, one male and one female, around which the circulatory system has been meticulously reproduced. Arteries, veins, and capillaries entwine the bones, running through the head, chest, and limbs. For centuries, there were legends that the vessels were real and the skeletons were the remains of people sacrificed for science. Supposedly, anatomist Historia Salerno, under the orders of Prince Raimondo di Sangro, injected a special substance into his servants while they were still alive, which caused their blood to petrify and preserve the vessels in perfect condition. In reality, things were a bit more prosaic. The vessels are made of wax, wire, and silk, but with such precision that even modern experts do not rule out that experiments on living people were conducted before the creation of the models. Prince Raimondo was an extraordinary person, an alchemist, inventor, and experimenter. He created fireworks that resembled architectural landscapes. He forged jewelry and supposedly invented an eternal flame that burned for 3 months. At one time, next to the female skeleton, there was a third skeleton of a fetus connected to the placenta, but in the 1990s, it was stolen. Nevertheless, the anatomical machines still amaze and frighten people, and apparently, that was their purpose. The first fortress of its kind from the Bronze Age. In the Romanian forests of Neamp's County, archaeologists discovered an ancient fortress about 5,000 years old, and modern LiDAR technology helped them with this. Thanks to drones equipped with laser scanners, it was possible to see through the dense vegetation and get a clear image of the structure that had been hidden from human eyes for centuries. The fortress dates back to the period of transition from the Neolithic to the Bronze Age, a time when people had just begun to build fortified settlements. LiDAR revealed that it was a well-designed and powerful structure, moats hundreds of meters long, earthen ramparts, and a strategically advantageous location on high ground. All this points to serious knowledge and labor organization among the ancient builders. Only with the help of modern technology can we truly understand the scale and structure of ancient monuments. These are not just ruins, they are traces of a complex and sophisticated civilization that we are only beginning to rediscover. A 2,500-year-old helmet and Dacian treasures. This golden helmet is one of the most famous artifacts of Dacian culture, dating back to around 450 BC. It is known as the Helmet of Cotofanesti and is considered not only a work of ancient jewelry art, but also a symbol of power and ritual strength. Adorned with eyes, snakes, and mythological scenes, it may have belonged to a priest or a chief who played a sacred role in Dacian society. The helmet seems to gaze at enemies, instilling fear and protecting its owner. On January 25, 2025, this helmet became the victim of a daring robbery from the Drenthe Museum in Assen, Netherlands, where the Dacia exhibition was being held. Several unique exhibits were stolen, including this helmet and 3 royal Dacian bracelets. All the items came from the National History Museum of Romania. The loss of these artifacts was a real blow to cultural heritage. A drill from 2,000 years ago. Scientists made an amazing discovery. Ancient craftsmen were already using diamond drills to work hard stones 2,000 years ago. This became clear after analyzing 50 ancient beads found in a burial site in Rabat, in what is now Uzbekistan. The burial dates back to the 2nd century BC to the 1st century AD and is associated with the Yuezhi culture, which existed in historical Bactria. The beads were made of carnelian, agate, and garnet, stones that are difficult to work with, even using modern tools. Research using an electron microscope showed that 41 beads have traces characteristic of diamond drilling. Moreover, the craftsmen most likely started by using a single drill. A single drill was used to start the hole, and then they switched to a more complex tool with 2 diamond points. Previously, it was believed that the technique of diamond drilling originated in the Indus civilization, in the area of modern India and Pakistan. But now it is becoming clear that similar technologies developed independently in different parts of Asia. Interestingly, although such methods are also found in Tanzania, Uzbek beads are made using a special technique that has not been found anywhere else. What did Danny's largest ship look like? The need for huge warships emerged long before steam engines and steel hulls. Thousands of years ago, fleets were already considered the most important tool of influence and dominance. Through it, borders were strengthened, territories were conquered, and access to key resources was gained. It is believed that the foundation of ancient military shipbuilding was laid by the Diadochi, the successors of Alexander the Great. They were the first to start building real combat giants, such as colliers and tesseraconters, comparable in scale to modern machines. One of the most impressive ships of antiquity was the Egyptian tesseraconter, built in the 3rd century BC by order of King Ptolemy IV Philopator. It was a real floating fortress, 130 meters long and 22 meters high. The vessel could hold about 4,000 rowers, not counting the crew, marines, and supplies. The name tesseraconter translates as 40-rowed, according to the number of rows of oars. The exact number of oars is disputed. Researchers mention numbers ranging from 300 to 600. According to surviving descriptions, the ship had powerful armament, a ram, catapults, battle towers, and outwardly resembled a moving fortress. Its sides were decorated with wooden carved vines. Crocodiles and other mythical creatures were painted on the stern, and the bow was crowned with a 5-meter figure of Aeolus, the ruler of the winds. Inside there were halls, statues, even libraries, and according to some sources, stables. All this spoke more about status than about practical military necessity. The tesseraconter was more a symbol of power than an effective ship. Because of its size, it lacked proper maneuverability and couldn't even go out to sea on its own. It was towed by rowing boats. Nevertheless, its very existence became an engineering breakthrough. The Egyptian tesseraconter is not just an archaic ship, but a vivid example of how ancient technologies could reach incredible scales. Yes, it did not become a combat legend, but it definitely went down in history as one of the most ambitious naval projects of its time. Ancient Roman cellar in Germany. In March 2023, archaeologists in Frankfurt am Main made a truly sensational discovery. During excavations in the historic Heddernheim district, researchers came across a uniquely preserved fragment of a Roman house, a wooden staircase leading to a cellar, almost 2,000 years old. It seems incredible since wood is rarely preserved for so long, especially in an urban environment. Heddernheim is a district with a rich history. Once the ancient Roman city of Nida was located here, founded during the reign of Emperor Augustus. Later, in 110 AD, Emperor Trajan made it the capital of the Civitas Tonensium region. The city flourished. Its population reached 10,000 people, but already in the 3rd century, due to attacks by Germanic tribes, it began to decline and was eventually abandoned. In the 20th century, most traces of Nida vanished as old houses were dismantled and cellars destroyed during construction. That's why the discovery of a wooden staircase and floor in a Roman cellar is a real miracle. The object was in excellent condition, and archaeologists decided to preserve it. The Florentine diamond. This sparkling stone is the legendary Florentine diamond, also known as the Austrian yellow. It weighed 137.45 carats, and it impressed not only with its size but also with its unusual yellowish hue. According to legend, the diamond first belonged to the influential Medici family and then ended up in the hands of the Habsburg dynasty, where it became part of the imperial regalia. For a long time, the Florentine was kept in the royal treasury in Vienna and was considered one of the most valuable stones in Europe. However, after the collapse of Austria-Hungary in 1918, its whereabouts became unknown. The stone was allegedly taken to South America and, according to rumors, was later split into several smaller diamonds to make it easier to sell and to hide its origin. To this day, it is unknown where the parts of the Florentine are, if it was indeed divided. Its history is shrouded in secrets and mysteries, and the diamond itself has become a symbol of the lost splendor of European dynasties. Perhaps it still lies today in some private safe, awaiting its reappearance. Mini Stonehenge. In the English county of Derbyshire, not far from the town of Matlock, archaeologists discovered an ancient ceremonial complex from the Bronze Age, about 3,700 years old. This place turned out to be part of a large stone circle that had been hidden in the forest for a long time. And it all started with the curiosity of a 24-year-old student, George Bird, who became interested in a solitary stone in the forest near his home. The stone, known as the Farley Moor Standing Stone, about 2 meters tall, was previously considered a solitary monument. But at Bird's initiative, researchers decided to carefully study the surrounding area. It turned out that the stone stands on top of a natural spring, whose water flows into the Bentley Stream and then into the Derwent River. Nearby, traces of an ancient platform were found, which was probably used for rituals long before the stone itself was erected. This suggests that the place was revered for centuries and held great significance for Bronze Age communities, especially in connection with water. Archaeologists also discovered 5 more stones that once stood upright. Altogether, they formed an oval circle about 25 meters wide. This discovery added to the list of 25 known Bronze Age stone circles found in the Peak District. The region is rich in ancient monuments and confirms that ritual life in those times extended far beyond Stonehenge. The Great Bell of Damazedi. The Great Bell of Damazedi is considered the largest bell ever made. It was cast in 1484 by order of King Damazedi of Myanmar and installed at the famous Shwedagon Pagoda in Yangon, one of the most sacred places for Buddhists in the country. According to historical records, the bell weighed over 290 tons, making it a record holder among such structures. However, the fate of the bell turned out to be tragic. In 1608, the Portuguese mercenary and adventurer Felipe de Brito captured Yangon and decided to take the bell to melt it down for weapons. While crossing the Bago River, he misjudged the structure's weight, causing the bell to capsize the barge and sink. Since then, it has never been found, despite numerous attempts. Today, the Great Damazedi Bell remains part of the legends and national pride of Myanmar. Its story is a reminder of how culture, spirituality, and greed can intertwine in a single artifact, the fate of which remains a mystery to this day. How people wrote before the Romans. In the Spanish province of Leon, archaeologists made a discovery that could change our understanding of early writing on the Iberian Peninsula. A spindle whorl was discovered in the ancient settlement of La Peña del Castro. A spindle whorl, a small object used in weaving, was found with an inscription engraved in the Celtiberian alphabet. The artifact dates back to around the 1st century BC. This is one of the northernmost and earliest finds of its kind. Before the arrival of the Romans, writing was hardly used in these lands, so the inscription became a real sensation. Scientists suggest that the text could have been a mark of ownership or had symbolic meaning. For example, it might indicate the status of the owner. Interestingly, the spindle whorl is made from local talc. This means it was produced right here. It was found in a storeroom where there were also baskets with seeds, tools, and even remnants of dried meat. All this points to a rather developed way of life and household. This find is important evidence that the local cultures were much more complex than previously thought. And even back then, they had already begun to use writing. The pyramid in Israel. In the Judean desert, not far from the Dead Sea, archaeologists stumbled upon a mysterious pyramid-shaped structure about 2,000 years old. Built from massive hand-hewn stones, each weighing hundreds of kilograms, the pyramid still remains a mystery to researchers. The structure is located about 20 kilometers south of Masada and dates back to the Hellenistic period, when the territory of Israel was ruled by the Ptolemies and Seleucids. In the very first week of excavations, bronze coins, weapons, papyri with Greek texts, pottery, and even ancient furniture were found here. And all of this was miraculously preserved thanks to the dry desert climate. Scientists suggest that the structure could have been a watchtower, protecting the trade route used to transport salt and bitumen from the Dead Sea. There is also another theory. It is possible that tax collectors were stationed here to inspect passing merchants. Later, during the Roman period, the structure could have been converted into a monumental tomb. Traces of burials indicate this, although unfortunately most of the tomb was looted. The results shocked the scientists. The story of the mummy, which had been kept at the University of Warsaw for many years and was shrouded in mystery, finally received a logical explanation. It was previously believed that this was a man, a priest named Horjehuti, who lived in the 1st century BC. However, in 2015, Polish researchers decided to perform a CT scan and discovered that it was actually a woman. Moreover, scientists thought that she was pregnant at the time of her death. The scans supposedly show the bones of a fetus, a tiny hand, a leg. This caused huge interest in the scientific world, as it could have been the first pregnant mummy ever discovered. Moreover, researchers noticed deformations on the skull of the mysterious lady and suggested that aggressive cancer could have been the cause of death. However, over time, doubts began to arise. Radiologist Sahar Salim from Cairo immediately noticed that there was no anatomical evidence of a fetus. She asked a logical question. Why did the bones disappear, but the child's soft tissues remain preserved? Recently, archaeologist Kamila Bralinskaya and her colleagues revisited the case and conducted a reanalysis of more than 1,400 CT scans of the bones. 4 independent groups worked on it, and they all came to the same conclusion. There was no pregnancy. The so-called fetus turned out to be clumps of tissue left over due to disruptions in the mummification process. The same goes for the supposed cancer. The skull was damaged during the removal of the brain, which is not uncommon with careless embalming. So the mysterious lady remains a mystery once again. A mystery, but now without sensational headlines. This story shows how important it is to double-check even the most high-profile scientific discoveries. The Tiara of Saitaphernes. For many years, the Louvre proudly displayed a golden tiara that supposedly belonged to the Scythian king Saitaphernes. The artifact's inscription stated it was given to the king by ancient Greek Olbia's inhabitants, and this seemed credible. However, behind its shiny appearance was one of the most notorious hoaxes in the history of archaeology. The story began in 1894 in Odessa when 2 antique dealers, the Gokman brothers, convinced a talented jeweler, Israel Rukamovsky, to make a diadem in the ancient Greek style for their archaeologist friend. Rukamovsky, not knowing ancient mythology, relied on illustrations from the books he was given. The resulting masterpiece, weighing half a kilogram, looked like a genuine artifact. Scenes from the Iliad, carefully engraved figures, and a solemn inscription praising the king. The Gokmans sold the item to the Louvre at a profit, where it was purchased for 200,000 francs. The deal was made, as people later joked, on April 1, 1896. However, soon, some archaeologists, particularly Adolf Furtwängler, began to doubt the authenticity of the artifact. The Louvre, however, claimed the criticism was due to envy and politics. The truth was revealed only in 1903 when Rukamovsky learned that his creation had become a museum relic. He came to Paris, personally reproduced a fragment of the diadem, and proved that it was a modern forgery. The Louvre had no choice but to admit its mistake. Afterward, the tiara entered the Hall of Forgeries, making Rukamovsky famous. Some of his works became sought after, and the tiara incident served as a key lesson for museums worldwide. The countless riches of the Incas, the treasures of Langanates, are one of the most thrilling legends about lost wealth in South America. According to legend, the countless treasures of the Incas, gold, silver, statues, and jewels, were hidden by the commander Rumi Ñahui in the mountains of Langanates in the east of modern-day Ecuador. This happened after the Spanish executed the Inca ruler Atahualpa in 1533, even though the Inca people had already begun gathering a ransom for him. When Ruminawi heard of Atahualpa's death, he ordered all abandoned riches hidden to keep them from the invaders. The Spanish captured him and subjected him to brutal torture, but he never revealed the secret of the treasure's location. Since then, the treasures of Langanates have been the subject of many expeditions and searches, but none have been successful. The dense jungles, impassable mountain trails, and myths of this region still keep the secret of the Inca gold. The legend lives on, inspiring treasure hunters from all over the world to search for the most mysterious hoard in South America. The harsh realities of ancient Egypt. During archaeological excavations in Goza, at the site of an ancient Egyptian gold mine, iron shackles about 2,200 years old were found. These heavy shackles became direct evidence of ancient accounts describing the cruel treatment of people who worked in the mines during the reign of the Ptolemaic dynasty. The shackles were discovered in a room that served as an ancient storage area. Inside, there were tools for processing ore, fragments of pottery, and 2 sets of shackles. One of them consisted of 7 ring locks connected by iron links, and the other had 4 links and damaged hoops. Their design is strikingly similar to the shackles found in the silver mines of Lorient in Greece, which suggests the transfer of technology and possibly forced labor methods from the Greek world to Egypt. Archaeologist Beranger Redden notes that this discovery confirms ancient texts describing the fates of prisoners of war and criminals who were sent to forced labor. The mine in Gotzi was active in the 3rd and 2nd centuries BC during a period of intense mining expansion under the Ptolemies. Residential houses, streets, and even baths were found at the site, but behind the facade of organized life, harsh conditions were hidden. Interestingly, archaeologists also found tablets and shards, with inscriptions indicating that some workers were paid, while others worked under strict control. Not a biblical miracle. The famous biblical miracle, when Moses supposedly parted the waters of the Red Sea to lead the Israelites, was considered supernatural intervention for many centuries. However, modern scientists offer a much more earthly explanation, and it is no less impressive. A new study has shown that about 3,500 years ago, weather and geographical conditions could very well have created the effect described in the Old Testament. Scientists from the U.S. National Center for Atmospheric Research have proven with the help of a computer model that with a wind speed of about 100 kilometers per hour blowing in the right direction, the water could temporarily recede, exposing land up to 5 kilometers wide, and then just as suddenly return like a tsunami wave. The biblical account says that the Lord made the sea move with a strong east wind all night. Researchers are convinced that the wind is the key to the mystery. The crossing site now more often considered is not the deep Gulf of Aqaba, but the shallower, flatter Gulf of Suez, where such a phenomenon would be possible. It is also known that Napoleon led his army across the shallow waters there during low tide in 1789, but almost drowned on the way back. There are other hypotheses as well. For example, the crossing might not have been over the Red Sea, but through Tanis, the so-called Reed Sea, which is mentioned in the original Hebrew, or the water could have receded because of an earthquake and tsunami, as happens in modern disasters when a wave pulls the water far away from the shore. The secret of the ancient miracle may not involve breaking nature's laws, but rather precisely calculating time, place, and having faith. The 700-year-old alchemist is alive. The name Nicolas Flamel has long been surrounded by an aura of mystery and legend. He was born in the 1330s in Pontoise, not far from Paris. Having lost his parents early thanks to a good education, he became a scribe in the capital and soon prospered. His offices with copyists brought in a steady income, and his clients were among the wealthy townspeople. The real mystery began in 1357, when Flamel acquired an ancient manuscript, the Book of the Sage Abraham, written in Aramaic, from a wandering merchant. To decipher it, he went to Spain, where, according to legend, he learned the secret of the Philosopher's Stone, a substance that turns metals into gold and grants immortality. In 1368, Flamel married a wealthy widow, Pernelle, which made him even richer. Together with his wife, they actively donated to churches, hospitals, and those in need. After Pernelle's death in 1402, Nicholas's generosity only increased. He remained remarkably vigorous even in his old age, which gave rise to rumors that Flamel had indeed created the elixir of eternal life. Flamel died in 1418, but rumors about him faking his death did not subside. He was allegedly seen in India, in the Ottoman Empire, and even in Paris in the catacombs. It was said that he and Pernelle were alive, hiding, and continuing to practice alchemy. Skeptics claim that the story is a 17th century invention, and that the Book of Hieroglyphic Figures was the work of London publishers. But interest in Flamel only grew. In the 19th century, a certain man pretended to be him, offering the secret of immortality for 300,000 francs. And his tombstone was found in a Paris shop, where it was being used as a cutting board. Today, the tombstone is kept in the Cluny Museum, and Flamel's house on Rue Montmorency is the oldest residential building in Paris. After Harry Potter, interest in Flamel was rekindled. What if he's alive, but just not eager to remind anyone about himself? The youngest archaeologist. During an ordinary family walk in Tel Azekah, Israel, 3-year-old Ziv Nitza accidentally made an archaeological discovery. She found an ancient scarab about 3,800 years old. This place is known as the site of the biblical battle between David and Goliath, and the find immediately attracted the attention of the Israel Antiquities Authority, which confirmed the authenticity and uniqueness of the artifact. It turned out that this was not just a pebble, but an ancient seal in the shape of a scarab, a symbol of renewal and rebirth in Egyptian culture, which the Canaanites used as an amulet or seal. According to researchers, the scarab is connected to the Canaanite civilization, a people who inhabited the lands of the Levant during the Bronze Age. Such items reflected beliefs, status, and the close cultural ties of Canaan with Egypt, a cache of golden treasures. In the French department of Dordogne, in the commune of Saint-André-d'Alas, workers unexpectedly stumbled upon a real treasure. Under an old stone wall, gold jewelry and pieces set with diamonds and pearls were hidden. The discovery was made by members of the organization Périgord Pierre Sèche, which is engaged in restoring traditional structures built using the dry stone method. The project leader, Jean-Marc Audit, said that during the excavation of the foundation, he noticed an unusual sparkle. That's how they discovered the jewelry, tangled in the roots of an old tree. Among them are rings, brooches, hairpins, and bracelets inlaid with stones. All this indicates that the treasure lay under the wall for several decades, if not centuries. How, when, and why the jewelry ended up in this place still remains a mystery. Currently, City Hall, the Prefecture, and the Gendarmerie are investigating and asking residents to report any information about the jewelry's history. According to the law, treasures found on municipal land are divided equally between the finder and the owner of the plot. The history of Port Arthur Prison. About an hour and a half from Hobart, the capital of Tasmania, lies one of the darkest places in Australian history, Port Arthur Penal Settlement. From 1830 to 1877, the most dangerous criminals of the British Empire were held here. After Great Britain lost the ability to send prisoners to the United States, they chose the distant lands of Australia. Initially, Port Arthur was just a timber station. It quickly became a full complex with 60 buildings, including prisons, churches, solitary cells, and well-kept gardens, all built by the convicts themselves. More than 12,500 people suffered here. The conditions were harsh: underground cells, isolation in complete darkness and silence, and hard physical labor. All this broke people's will and left deep scars on their psyche. One of the most horrifying stories is the murder of Joseph Shuttleworth in the prison church. He was hacked to death by another inmate right during work. The motive remains unknown, and on Dead Man's Island, where prisoners were buried, one of the convicts allegedly encountered the devil himself. Since the prison was closed, stories about ghosts started to appear here, from the sounds of footsteps and children's laughter to the ghosts of women and soldiers. Port Arthur is considered one of the most haunted places in Australia. Today, it is an open-air museum and a UNESCO heritage site. But even on a sunny day, you can feel something unsettling here: the memory of those who spent their last days within these walls. I would be glad if you leave a kind comment under the video and share this video with your friends. And I strongly recommend you watch the previous video about alien discoveries made by archaeologists that did not get the attention they deserved. Thank you for watching. Goodbye, everyone.